folks. Let's talk about gas. And I have gas. Gas is gear acquisition syndrome. This is a disease that can affect musicians, that puts a drive in their brain that makes them constantly search out new equipment to make them better. This can become very dangerous and very expensive. I know, I've had it for over 20 years. When I was 16 years old, I was playing in high school marching band, and I was playing a Bundy 2 tenor saxophone that my mom rented from Port Huron Music in Michigan. And on one of my breaks, I placed the horn on the top bunk of a 2-bunk bed, and I was laying on the bottom bunk taking a nap. For some reason, I woke up and I kicked the bunk above me. Because it looked fun, I forgot my horn was there, and the horn flew 2 meters to the ground next to me. As you can guess, the horn was dented all over, none of the pads sealed. It was a disaster. And I apologize again to the people at Port Huron Music that put it back together, and it continued to play. Near the end of my 16th year of existence, my best friend told me that his neighbor's dad was selling an old saxophone he had in the basement. Well, I've never really done this kind of thing before. I said, okay, I'll check it out. So my friend and I went over there, and in his basement was an old case. I could tell it was old. It smelled old. And an old saxophone, which looked like it was in good condition. I put a mouthpiece on, and it played, and it had a nice sound. I said, I want this saxophone. So I asked my mom, and I cashed in a U.S. savings bond that I was given at an earlier birthday, and I took some of the cash I had from working at the fast food restaurant, and I bought this Conn tenor saxophone for $600 or something. So I take it to school, and in jazz band, my teacher looks over and notices the new horn and says, "That doesn't have a naked lady on it, does it?" And I blushed a little because I was like, no, I don't have a naked lady on my saxophone. And then I looked closely and I saw the little pentagram and the etching of a lady's face, her hair, and her bust inside this pentagram. And I said, actually, I think it does have a naked lady in it. My teacher looked at it and said, that's a Conn 10M. That's a pretty cool saxophone. So I was excited that I found something cool for $600 in my best friend's neighbor's basement. I think the fire for gas started around this time. However, I didn't have the financial means to make good on much of it. I did buy my first jazz mouthpiece by going to a local store and asking for a jazz mouthpiece metal. They handed me a little gray box that said Dukoff on the side, and I purchased it without knowing what it was. It was a Dukoff H8, which was a late 80s or 90s Dukoff that they made in the style of the 1940s Dukoff. So lower baffle, darker sound, great jazz sound. I still have that mouthpiece today, I'm proud to say, and I still play it for jazz. Small victories. The days of the Conn 10M didn't last forever. I bought my second tenor around the age of 20 after I was working a couple of day jobs to make some money and playing gigs at night. I was contacted by a friend of mine who was also an old friend of James Carter's, and she had a house in downtown Detroit that was like a saxophone museum. And I'd been over to see her saxophones before. I met her at a jam session and went over there. Nice lady. Eccentric lady. And she had an old Selmer there. And the serial number was 50222. This didn't mean much to me, but I played it and I liked it. And I asked my mom, and I borrowed some money and I put some money down. And I bought this horn, this 5222 Selmer tenor. If you're a saxophonist, you know that that is a super balanced action. and is potentially one of the holy grail tenor saxophones you could buy today. Cool. It played nice for me. However, this was also around the time I started looking on internet forums. It was a brand new concept, the internet and forums. And I was on Sax on the web like over 20 years ago and stuff like. So I was researching and I realized, well, this is an older summer, but the Mark VI tenor is actually the horn that's going to make me a better player. It has a really cool G-sharp rocking mechanism, and they're the right horns. That's the horn for a serious player. So I started browsing around on the internet, and I stumbled into a dealer who lived in Pennsylvania, who I think is still active today. And he had a 123 XXX Mark VI for sale, which looked good in the pictures. And I said, okay, well, maybe this guy will take a trade from my Selmer for his. Probably a fair deal. Looking back on that today, no, not so much. But I shipped my horn to Pennsylvania. He shipped his horn to me. I opened the case. It looked nice. It smelled nice. And it played okay. I didn't fall immediately in love with it. But I was okay. I had a Mark VI tenor. That means I've made it. I'm a serious player now. Until the guy called me. The dealer guy called me up and said, I'm not happy with this trade. I want you to put the horn back in the box. I want you to send it back. And I said, what are you talking about? Like, this is my horn now. I want a Mark VI. I'm a serious player. I need a Mark VI. He says, well, the super balanced you sent me has a patch down by the low thumb rest. And I said, there's no patch. I didn't know what the hell a patch was. He sent me a picture, and there was some repair work. There was a metal thing underneath the thumb rest. And today I don't even know what it is. But to me, it wasn't a big deal. It was probably done a couple of years after the horn was made, so in the 50s. It looked like part of the horn. I didn't know. I was a kid. So the guy said, I want my Mark VI back. I said, well, can we do something about this? He says, well, you could send me some money. I said, well, I don't really have a lot of money. I just spent it on this super balanced action not too long ago. He says, do you have any other horns? And I said, well, I have a Con 10M with a naked lady in it. And he was happy. His voice was raised, and he says, yeah, tell me about it. So I told him the serial number. He said, okay, do you have anything else? I said, well, I have this YSS 61 soprano sax that I bought when I was 16 years old as well. And he said, great, ship them both to me and it's a deal. And I said, yeah. Looking back on that today, I got my ass kicked. I was a stupid, naive kid. I should have said, give me back the SBA. I should have played on that my entire career and moved on. I didn't. So, I lost hard. Needless to say, the love affair with the Mark VI didn't last forever. I was playing in a lot of blues bands and funk situations and pop groups, wedding bands, louder situations. Now I look back and go, that was, probably okay. But at the time, I wanted to be louder. I needed to be louder. So the 6 stayed with me for a handful of weeks, maybe a couple of months, and I bought a Super 20 because I was told a Super 20 is louder than the Mark VI. I bought it. Silver neck, no funky pearls. Didn't fall in love with it. It was louder. Played a couple of gigs with it. Okay, great. Sold it. Bought a 1920s Conchu tenor because that's a bigger sound. Gonna try that. Going back in the day. I loved the sound. Hated the ergonomics. But I played it for 6 months on a steakhouse gig I had. I was playing it 4 days a week. It was absolutely perfect for that. Should have kept it. Sold it. Sold it cheap. Bought my first Martin tenor. Loved the Martin tenor. Played it for a long time. Played a lot of blues gigs on it. It's perfect for that. It's a soul machine. And it plays jazz. It's just great. Sold it. Bought a Con 10M with rolled tone holes. Thought this might be the answer. So I went back to my roots with the naked lady horn. Then I had it overhauled. A technician put in giant oversized resonators. The horn lost its vintage character. I sold it. Found another Martin locally. Played it for a long time. Long time, I mean maybe a couple of months. Then I sold it. A Mark VI fell into my lap. A friend was selling one. I bought it. I thought, okay, I'm going back to Mark 6. This is the gold standard. Had the Mark 6. Played it. Couldn't get any volume out of it. Sold it again. Bought a Kyleworth SX90R black nickel. Brand new, $5,000 from Tenor Madness. Great horn. Had it for 6 years. Hallelujah. I had a horn for 6 years. I played this in the Sun Messengers. I played this on all kinds of gigs. It was great. It was stolen, if you remember correctly, going back 10 years ago. It was stolen and recovered. Crazy. In Germany, I played a Moriat 66. Played it against the Kyleworth. Loved the Moriat sound. I can't get away from that vintage American con sound, so I went with the Moriat. Had that for a few years. Wasn't playing it a whole lot because I was playing a lot of piano and guitar out here. A couple of years ago, I decided I'm going back towards the saxophone. I went to an expensive dealer. I found a Mark 6 that I absolutely fell in love with. I bought it. I still have it. I paid too much for it, but it's great. So, no more Moriat. I keep the Mark 6. I bought another Martin tenor to keep in the US. Love it. Here in Germany, I bought a Conchu tenor. Sold that too cheap. Bought a 20 silver plate Conchu. Still have that. Stumbled into a Con 30M. Still have that. May sell it, not sure yet. Bought an SML Rev A. Still have it. Trying to sell it. Bought a Busher True Tone. Busher Top Hat and Cane. Still have it. May sell it. Bought another Martin tenor. That's gas, folks. That's gas. Once I had the means to buy some things, I just started buying things. Do I need it? No. Is it taking my attention away from practicing? Yes, it's taking my attention away from practicing. I don't recommend it. Oh, that was just the tenors. When I was 16, I had a Busher Aristocrat alto. Probably a 70s or 60s. It wasn't a real awesome one, but it was cool. I liked it. Sold it to a girl that I was dating for cheap. Then I bought a Pre-Chew Con, played that for a few years. Then I bought a Conchu, played that for a few years. Then I got rid of both of those, bought a Mark 6 Alto that I played with the Sun Messengers for a few years. Loved that Mark 6 Alto. Should have kept it. Traded it when I left the Sun Messengers because I didn't need an Alto anymore. Traded down to a Yamaha Custom Z. Great horn. Played that for a few years. Had it in the dueling pianos and then realized I don't need a $3,000 Alto in my dueling piano gigs anymore. Sold it, took the money, did something else with it. Maybe bought a tenor, who knows. Then I bought an ugly Mark 6 Alto on eBay. Had it overhauled. Said, if it plays good, I'll keep it. If not, I'll sell it and make a couple of dollars on it. Fine. Still have it. It's great. Also bought a Martin Alto. Ended up selling it to a friend in the States who wants to be Art Pepper. So that worked out great. Baritones. I had a Pre-Chew baritone sax keyed to E flat. That was the first baritone I owned. I had it overhauled. Probably should have kept it now, but sold it. It was only keyed to E flat. I need that high E and F on a baritone all the time, right? Then I had a Cuff Superba Low A, Superba 2 Low A. That thing was awesome. Ended up selling it. First Martin baritone that I ever purchased was also awesome. I ended up selling that too cheap when I lost my house. Then I bought a second Martin baritone. So I've had a handful of baritones. Folks, if you're still here after 13 minutes, congratulations to you. I'm barely still awake. After 20 years in the business, I've owned almost one of everything. Everything I purchased, I bought with the hope to make me a better player. Some horns took me up a notch. Some horns took me down a notch. Some horns had great mechanics. Some had awesome sounds. Some had smoky characters. Some were very neutral. And then some were complete powerhouses. That's cool. And it was a fun little game and a fun adventure. The people I've met, the stories I can tell about these horns, the experiences, mostly positive. However, without having gas and the drive to constantly upgrade my gear, researching, traveling, having overhauled, making bids, chasing things, if I just would have stayed with the 347 XXX Con 10M with the Naked Lady, I'd be a better player today. Cheers.